Hey everyone, I want to tell you about a moment I had several years ago when working with a client. She sat down across from me and said, Katie, I stood in my kitchen yesterday and I realized I've become someone I don't recognize. And the scary part for me right now is that I don't even know if my marriage fits into that equation of what I want. She took a moment and then she asked me, is this perimenopause or is it my relationship? Because I can't honestly tell anymore. And you know what? I thought that's the question we need to talk about. Not what supplement should we take in perimenopause or what protocol should we follow or how do I manage hot flashes? Yeah, there's a point to all of that too. The real question we need to be looking at is what happens in your relationship when you're fundamentally changing and nobody's talking about it. Because here's what I know after working with hundreds of people around the world. Perimenopause doesn't just change your body. It changes what you're willing to tolerate in your relationship. And that shift, that's not a crisis. It might feel that way, but it's not. It's an invitation. So whether you're going through perimenopause or you know someone who is, you're going to want to listen to this. And before we dive into this episode, I want to make sure you're aware of the Behind the Transformation Summit. It's the conversations women actually need to have about perimenopause. I've brought together 14 other experts plus myself to give women in perimenopause the tools to help them in their evolution, in this beautiful transformation we're going through. These interviews truly have opened my eyes to so much. I am not exaggerating. Each woman has such an interesting perspective of the perimenopause journey, and it has truly transformed my own life. So from March 16th to the 20th, you're going to get a chance to hear from each of them in a private audio series. And not only is it going to be an audio series, but you get to be a part of the community of women from around the world who are just like you. You get a chance to ask the experts questions, and we all get to learn together. So make sure to register at the link in the show notes. Go grab a warm drink, and let's dive in. Welcome to Relationship Reset, a podcast for high-achieving couples who've been together for over a decade and don't want to feel like roommates anymore. I'm Katie Rustler, relationship strategist and couples counselor with almost 20 years of experience helping ambitious couples reconnect, strengthen communication, and turn their relationship into the best part of their success story. This podcast is about using practical tools and a lot of real talk to help you understand your patterns, stop feeling stuck and discouraged, and start working on your relationship in ways that actually fit your busy life. Because your relationship shouldn't be the cost of your success, it should be the best part of it. So let's dive in. Okay, so here's what I've been hearing a lot lately with the women in my practice. I don't know what's wrong with me. I feel like I'm changing and my partner's not keeping up. I'm so angry all the time and I don't know why. I don't know if I'm supposed to stay or if it's time for me to go. I love him, but I don't know if I'm happy anymore. And when I dig deeper after these comments and questions are made, I often find the same thing. The woman saying these things is somewhere in perimenopause. Now, I want to be clear about something right from the start. This episode isn't about managing your symptoms. Y'all know me. We're going to be talking about relationships. We're going to dive into what perimenopause does to your relationship when you're not paying attention. Because here's what nobody tells us. Perimenopause doesn't just change your hormones. It changes your brain chemistry, which then impacts your tolerance for things, for inauthenticity, including yours, for people pleasing, for staying small, for swallowing your truth. And when that tolerance shifts, your relationship feels the impact immediately. Believe me, your partner knows something's going on. They may be describing you as moody or sensitive or a little too emotional, but they do know something's going on. So let me share with you a moment in my own marriage that really changed everything for me. I was standing on the playground because that's where you have serious arguments when you've got kids, right? And I looked at my husband and I said, I have given up so much for you. I have compromised so much. It enrages me. What is it that you've had to give up for me? And he looked at me with this expression I'll never forget and said, you don't think I've had to compromise for you? Of course, I was furious because, here I am. I'm on my high horse, ready to just show how I do all the things and he gets all he wants. And boy, was I wrong. So, of course, I said, well, list them out for me because I can only think of enough to fill one hand. And so he started listing things and he kept listing and he kept sharing and he wasn't being mean. I'd asked for it, but I hadn't realized the things my husband had to give up, some of his dreams, what he pictured his life to be like by marrying an American, by marrying me, right? Different culture, having to speak English as our quote romantic language. But really, it's the language we process everything in. The things I felt like I had to give up, He had to give up too, and other things I hadn't even thought about. That was the moment I knew the question actually wasn't about him. It was about me doing my own soul searching because I am in perimenopause and was back then when I started asking these questions. And my body was withdrawing consent from things I'd been tolerating for years, that I'd been saying yes without realizing I was saying yes. I just went along with the flow. And of course, back then, I was much more agreeable to things because I wasn't so burned out and exhausted, and I didn't have this intolerance build up. So, let me explain what's happening biologically first, because this really does matter that we're all educated on this, including our partners. When your hormones start to shift, estrogen fluctuates, progesterone declines. And when I say fluctuates, I want you to imagine the craziest, wildest roller coaster you've ever seen. And progesterone declining is like this its own roller coaster, but it's going downhill slowly, progressively, but with lots of dips and turns. Your nervous system changes too because of this. You become more sensitive to stress. Your brain literally processes emotions differently. Smells, sights, sounds become overstimulating quickly. The things you used to let slide, your body now says, no more. Have you said that recently? I know I have. And here's what I see constantly with the women I work with and the couples I see. The women in perimenopause start questioning their relationships, not because the relationship suddenly got bad. In fact, it's pretty consistent behaviors and habits they've had for years, but because they're finally paying attention to what hasn't been working for years. That rage you feel, that's not hormones making you crazy. That's your power coming back, your ability to stand firm in what you want. The intolerance for your partner's habits, that's not you being difficult. That's your body withdrawing consent from patterns that don't serve you anymore. The questioning whether you're happy, that's not showing that relationship's been a failure. That's an awakening for something greater. And I don't mean a new partner, I mean in your relationship. So here are the three patterns that I see. When women come to me in perimenopause questioning their relationship, they're almost always stuck in one of these patterns. The first one, emotional exhaustion from people pleasing. You've spent years managing everyone else's emotion, keeping the peace, making sure everyone's comfortable, putting yourself last. And now your body's done. It's saying, I can't do this anymore, but you don't know how to stop. So you keep going until you hit burnout. And the cost is you can't even answer the question, what do I need? Because you've been too busy taking care of everyone else. When I ask my clients, so what is it that you need or what is it you want? They're like, I don't even know anymore. I get that. Pattern number 2, fear-based decision making. You're making decisions based on guilt. What will people think? Shame. I should be grateful for what I have. Everything looks good on paper. Fear of regret. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I do this wrong? What if I impact everybody by making a decision that will hurt people? You're stuck on the hamster wheel of what if. And here's what happens. You stay paralyzed. You can't move forward. You can't make a decision. You just spiral. And again, that fear-based decision making is often about other people. What will they think? What will they do? How will it impact them? And yet we resent others for not thinking about those things with us, which leads us to pattern number 3, silent resentment and self-abandonment. Yeah, this one was my pattern, raising my hand. I resented my husband for decisions I had made too. I got quiet about what I wanted. I stopped speaking up. I learned as a military kid to just go with the flow, right? Like, we're going to pick up and do this. Sure. Yes. Okay. I have no say. It's not that my partner was saying I have no say. I had just been trained and conditioned to believe I don't really have a say. I got to go where they tell me to go. Years later, I woke up furious at him for things he didn't even know I'd given up. So when this happens, you either explode reactively or you implode, numbing with food, wine, scrolling, binge watching. And that little voice inside says, don't rock the boat. Don't cause problems. It's absolutely infuriating, isn't it? So here's what you need to understand. When you're in perimenopause and questioning your relationship, you're not actually standing at a crossroads asking left or right. You're standing in a cocoon of transformation asking, who am I becoming? And that is uncomfortable. It's absolutely disorienting and it's extremely messy, but it's so necessary because growth requires discomfort before clarity. I talk about this in my book, The New Face of Grief. A water lily grows in muddy, murky water. This beautiful specimen has to be in the dirt and the yuck, full of minerals and nutrients, but not clear or pristine. The discomfort is what creates the bloom. Perimenopause is the mud. Your transformation gets to be that blossom, that water lily. So Here's what I've learned, both in my own marriage and working with couples for almost 20 years now. And it's really important. So I want to make sure you hear this clearly because certain points are going to be for some of you and other points are going to be for others. The first, you're allowed to change your mind. The version of you that said yes to this relationship at 25 or 30 is not the version of you at 45. And that's okay. You're allowed to reevaluate, to say, this worked then, but I need something different now. That doesn't mean the relationship failed. It has evolved, and where it's at, you no longer fit in. The next thing I want you to know is you're allowed to double down on your commitments. Changing doesn't mean leaving. That's the process my husband and I have been going through. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is stay and transform the relationship from the inside. To say, I'm changing and I'm inviting you to change with me, and our relationship needs to adjust too. You're also allowed to hold boundaries. Your body is literally withdrawing consent. When you feel that rage, that intolerance, that frustration, this isn't something to suppress, it's something to listen to. You do not have to respond in the old ways that you did. You now get to hold boundaries and say, my no means no. We're not negotiating out of that. Here are other options, but my no stays no. Or here's what I need from our relationship or how we communicate with each other. Let's work together to get there because not getting there is just not an option. The last thing I want to make sure you know is you're allowed to speak up for what you need. Here's one of the biggest patterns I see in long-term relationships. Women stop asking for what they need because they've learned their voice doesn't matter. That's not just because of your partner's behaviors. It is how we've been conditioned early on. The issue is your partner cannot meet needs they don't know exist. And you can't know what you need until you stop people pleasing long enough to ask yourself, what do I truly need right now? What lights me up? What have I pushed aside? What do I want to say yes to that I know my partner doesn't like or that doesn't fit with what my family's life is right now? What are the things I need to write down on paper and say, these are the things I want? And then sit down with my partner and talk about those. The couples who've been able to do this work together come up with such creative ways to make sure everyone's needs are met. It amazes me every time. And often the woman comes in defensive and ready to fight. And their partner's like, no, just tell me what it is you want. Let's see how we can make that happen. They're prepared for their partner to say no immediately. Let's break these old habits and these old mindsets. Here's something I want you to realize that there are 3 identities in every relationship. There's you, your partner, and the relationship. I want you to think of it like a Venn diagram. You have your circle, your partner has their circle, and where they overlap, that's the relationship. Again, it has its own identity. But here's what I see constantly with women in perimenopause. You either shrink your circle to make the relationship circle bigger, or you start to build your circle up so big and pull away from the relationship because you figure it can't change. And then you start to point your finger saying it's your partner's fault, but it's not your partner's fault. You did that. You made it smaller or you made it bigger. And don't worry, they do their own thing too. They do things that cause these problems as well, but we're speaking about perimenopause. So I got to talk to you ladies first. So actually the question becomes, are all 3 identities getting their needs met? You, your partner, and the relationship. Most of us have never even thought about it that way. We think it's all about the relationship or all about our partner or all about us, but it's all 3. And all 3 need care. So let's reframe what's happening, okay? Perimenopause isn't asking, should you stay or should you go? Perimenopause is asking, who are you now and what do you need? It's an invitation to stop editing yourself, stop performing, stop shrinking, start coming home to who you actually are now. And when you do that work, when you come home to yourself, you show up differently in your relationship, not because your partner changed, but because you did. And sometimes that means staying and transforming together. And sometimes it means leaving and honoring your growth, but it always means coming home to yourself first. If you're in perimenopause and questioning your relationship, here are 3 questions I want you to sit with. First one, who am I without constantly editing myself? Somewhere along the way, your identity became wife or partner or mom. You lost your name. Who are you when you don't have to walk on eggshells? Who are you when you don't have to compromise every choice? What lights you up? Question number 2, what dreams and desires have I pushed aside? When I met my husband, I had a vision of a group private practice where families in crisis could get holistic support. And before I left the States, I had built to having 3 people working under me. But when we moved to Germany, I left that dream. I had to let it go. And for years, I resented him for it, even though he never asked me to give it up. I had to grieve what I'd pushed aside before I could see what was being built instead. Question number 3, if I fully honored who I'm becoming, what would change in me and around me? When I started doing this work, I changed how I dressed. how I took care of my health. I went back to therapy because I knew I needed to honor who I was becoming. And that needed support. And it needed to show itself in different ways. I stopped waiting for my husband to change and started changing myself. And because of that, everything around me shifted. My relationship transformed because I transformed. Okay, so here's your homework for this week. On March 16th, I'm hosting a 5-day audio summit called Behind the Transformation. It's the conversations we actually need to be having around perimenopause, not what protocol to do or supplement to take. It's the real conversations about this transformation we're going through and how to navigate it where we feel more like ourselves than what people are telling us to be. So your homework, go register for that in the link in the show notes. Not only is an audio summit, but it comes with a community of women just like you from around the world who are sharing their stories. And guess what? It's free because this type of support we should just naturally have. So again, that's your homework. Go sign up for the summit. And if you're listening and you know somebody in perimenopause who needs this community too, as well as the supportive resources, send them the link. Okay, here's what I want you to know. If you're questioning your relationship right now, it's not a sign that everything is failing. You are evolving, and your relationship needs that evolution. Because when you do the work of coming home to yourself, of understanding who you are, what you need, and what lights you up, you show up differently. Not because your partner changed, because you did. That's transformation. That's the work. That's perimenopause as an invitation. So go register for the summit, and I'll see you next week. Before you go, I want to leave you with this. The effort you put into your relationship is one of the most important investments you'll ever make. How you communicate and grow together shapes your home, your leadership, and the example you set for the people around you. Relationship work is truly legacy work, and it quietly impacts more lives than we often realize. If this episode resonated, consider sharing it with someone you care about, a partner, a friend, or another couple who's building a full life and want their relationship to be the best part of it too. And if you're enjoying these conversations, make sure to follow or subscribe to Relationship Reset. Leaving a rating or review also helps this message reach more couples who are ready to grow with intention. I'll see you next week.